Communicate through the tone.
So join us next week.
Shall we? Sorry, that was pick up again later.
It's all randomly threw out whenever it's
Hello everyone, welcome to Statera Podcast. We're doing a special podcast up in Toodyay, and thanks very much, Kelwyn, for allowing us to come up here today.
My pleasure.
It's good that you're on the podcast again. And Helah, return podcasty. How are you going?
Good.
That's good. And Daniel, of course. Good to have you as well here, mate.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
We didn't even really decide what we were going to talk about, did we? But
Toes?
and toe clippings. It's an important issue.
Yeah, I used to have crooked toes, and now they're straight.
How'd you arrive there, Daniel? How'd you get
I
there?
stopped wearing shoes.
So easy done.
Answer to a lot of life's problems.
It fixes everything.
So last problems, eh? Yeah, that's cool.
On the topic of toes, I've actually got strange toes, and I don't know what that's for. But if you look at my feet, it goes 3 across. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
down.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Mind my hairy leg. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'm meant to climb trees, give me extra grip. But yeah.
Maybe. You just need that to be opposable. Your big toe.
Someone
Need
said
to be
once
sorted.
it was an Egyptian foot. I don't know if Egyptian have different feet.
Apparently I have Asian feet. Like Asian have because my second toe is bigger than my big toe. Apparently it's a real Asian genetic trait.
I think that's called a Morgan.
No,
Is it?
Morton.
Morton's
toe.
Morton's toe.
Most
Okay.
criminals actually have.
Really? Yeah.
I thought there was something.
Yeah. That probably makes sense, eh?
Yeah. I thought that's what was going on with me. I was like, I've got 2 Morton's toes.
Sure.
Big criminal.
Maybe you're meant to be an artist with your toes. you know,
Maybe.
Painting.
Do your portrait
Yeah,
later.
try it.
Sure, you probably could, Helah, too. Give it a crack anyway. Just begging to be
Next
clear.
chapter.
It's into chapter 1, chapter 2.
Fingers.
Well, what are we doing up here this weekend? Maybe we could have a chat about that.
Well, yeah, I guess it was good just to get everyone together again. I guess, a year and a half ago, it was sort of the beginning of a journey for all of us when we gathered here, and we've come up many times since.
We have to give honourable mention to Kelly, SJ, the Canadian girl, Paulina.
Yeah. Jai, Adam Dahi.
Yeah.
And it's really bad if we forget anyone as well.
I think that's it.
Ross.
Obviously Ross.
Ross, of course.
It's like,
Oh, he's already he's
here.
still here anyway.
He's
Yeah, of course, Ross. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Ross?
Oh.
His ditch playing was amazing last night.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
He's gone to another level with that.
Yeah.
He's really
Mate,
tuned into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this is kind of a spiritual place for us, kind of a resetting and a grounding. You can't see it obviously, but there's this amazing view out there.
We need a mirror.
And it's absolutely beautiful any time of the year. And we find that whatever energy you bring here, it sort of amplifies. So, if you come up here with full of love and expression, creativity, you find that it just flows and amplifies. So I guess it's been important for us to all get together and just fill in what we've all been going through and talk deeply about it. And
Everyone needs a spot they can disappear to and reset. don't they?
absolutely, in the nature and the
Bush
clean
house.
air and just the energy of this place is amazing. It's beautiful, and you really do feel very invigorated, enlightened, refreshed after a weekend up here.
I like definitely what you said there about this place amplifies what's going on with you. It truly does, yeah. I hadn't really thought about that too much, but it definitely makes sense. It has for me, I know it has for other individuals that have been here, and also, of course, as a group, whenever we come up here, it just amplifies whatever's going on in our life. So there must be many other areas like that you can do that. And I'm sure for a long period of time that's what people used to do. Go to these certain spots, this be there like their spiritual, emotional, mental uplifting, amplification. They'd spend a bit of time there.
And I guess many factors can go into it, like there's a lot of quartz throughout the ground here, which is a natural amplifier. They used it for the first radio set and putting a wire on each end and it would amplify any signals that came across it. But also, just charging residual energies. We've had some beautiful times up here, and it is a bit of a retreat and somewhere to reset. So I guess there is this residual energy of love, of nature, of appreciation, of stillness and presence. Also, someone said that apparently Toodyay is on ley lines.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so there is actually an energy in this area through this ground. And
vein.
Yeah, like a meridian line, energy flow point, I guess. And just with the shape of the land, there's lots of little mounds and stuff around. But I think the way my mum's ex-partner came across this place, it was a choice between a few, and he would just go and sit and meditate and just be still, be present in the land, get a feel for it, and hope it talks to him. So yeah, they were umming and ahhing about getting this place, and he was meditating on this rock, and he had this vision of a monk in a red robe sort of walked up and was just sitting with him, and that was obviously a very big sign for him. Apparently he was doing these little gadgets, something to do with killing off cancer cells, and he had to go deliver one, and the lady he delivered it to was with a friend who was apparently a psychic, and she said, "Oh, you've got a friend with you wearing a robe," and he was just like, "Oh my God, monk's here with me," sort of thing. So that was a big part of the decision to get this place, and he's not around anymore here. I mean, he's still around, but he said to me, I saw him a little while ago.
The monk?
No, not the monk. My mum's ex, and I told him about all the special times we've had up here, and how it's had a big part in, I guess, our individual journeys as well. And he was very happy because he felt like there was a special purpose for this place, very sacred, and to hear of all the good times and what we've gone through here, he was very pleased that was, I guess, fulfilled in a way.
Being used in the intent that he believed it would.
Yeah.
It's actually happening.
Yeah. Place of healing and growth.
Yeah.
And I believe it is.
Yeah. Really does give you a rocket up the arse when you come here.
Yeah, well, I guess it brings a lot up, and
good and bad.
Personally, I did not get a rocket up the arse.
Yeah, but I don't think you didn't need it. It gave you what you needed.
Well, you were in the bedroom all night. We don't know what was happening.
Thought I put all the rockets away.
Yeah.
Just talking about that. Whenever I talk about energy with people, 50% of the time I get a really bad reaction to that term. Especially if they study science, they're like, they get really aggressive. So I'm going to put it out to the group how you would explain energy as if you were talking to a scientist.
I've thought about this quite a bit actually, especially coming from a science background, and having a dad who is so, every time I talk about energy, you can't use that word because, energy means this and this and this and this and that. But actually I think it's the same sort of thing. So the term energy on a broader scale is kind of talking about, let's start from light. Light is a form of energy. It's an encapsulation of energy. It's a particle that comes and enters the earth, for example, from the sun. But then that light gets absorbed by, say, the leaves on the tree, or your skin.
Every cell in our body has a light receptor as well, so
Yeah.
we actually
So
absorb.
then that light that comes in, then gets, let's say it goes into a tree, gets transferred into a different form, a different representation of that same energy. And then that then flows into something else, and then we might grab it and eat it, the fruit from that tree, which contains that energy that's been transformed many times. And then once you eat it, then it gets transformed into different parts into you as well. So it's through your digestive system. It then gets spread out through various different ways. You get all sorts of different channels through your body, and that energy still comes from the same source. It's still energy, and it's still the same scientific term. It's energy as we see in science, but it's the same energy that flows through everything.
So without light, there's no growth really, because I mean we start small, and get bigger and bigger, and basically we're just we're eating energy, light from fruit, plants or animals, and then that becomes part of us slowly, and we get growth. A tree can't grow without light.
I think of it slightly different again. I think of it as like a computer board, and you've got the on and off switches. So there's either energy getting pushed through, the currency, or it's not, it's blocked. So when you come to a space like this, if it's life-giving, if it's turning you on, if you're having a phenomenal experience with it, you can feel that vital currency kind of going through you and moving through you. And that could maybe come from like the quartz in the land, or even perhaps beauty itself may have something in it that's intrinsically like speaks to our core, perhaps. Yeah.
That's how computers work, is by opening and shutting off the ones and zeros.
Yeah.
That's how they
On and off.
on and off. And then they get their outcomes based on what they turn on and off. Yeah.
But also, as well as that, even if you were completely shut off from any other forms of energy, you still have matter. So matter is energy. It's a different encapsulation of energy. So your body itself also is like this big
It's
storage
just a denser
energy.
vibration. Yeah.
Well, I say everything is energy. Light obviously has less information. I think that's what they're saying. Like the denser something becomes, the more information is there. And this sort of comes down to what we're saying about infinite division within a finite boundary. Basically, we all have this finite body, but as you grow, you've got that splitting of cells and all that sort of thing. That things get smaller and smaller. When things get denser, it's basically more physical, but it's because it's contained so much information, or turned on information, I guess.
You could also argue that the light has all that information in the first place.
Yeah, so it's maybe the fact that the information's turned on
Activated something.
activated.
But it's interesting because they say, like, I think it's Bohm, it has like the holographic template, and that theory is like every single piece has the information for the rest of the whole. So then you wouldn't have different kind of densities of information.
Yeah.
You kind of flip that on its head a little bit.
So I think they match perfectly.
Do they?
Yep.
Yeah, and just different parts activated to play a different role, maybe. Like they say, the actual cells and stuff of plants often look very similar to the bigger, the actual plant itself. That fractal rule, or
Who says that?
someone said. But yeah, well, they've shown that there is a fractal nature, that the small individual parts can often look like the whole.
Fractals are everywhere in absolutely every aspect of our entire being, and the entire universe, and the state of the universe, and even the state that we don't perceive. It's all infinite fractals.
Yeah, we look at solar systems and galaxies and stuff like that. You look on an atomic level, you've got the similar structure, the spin and rotation, orbit and stuff like that.
That's what's great about that link that you posted a couple of days ago, showing how the solar system really moves throughout space, and it's not like this linear plane. Yeah, it's debatable, but it's interesting nonetheless. But how it moves with it, and so it's like this vortex that's created as it moves along. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really good video. I can't remember what it's called now.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was like,
but it's just an interesting premise that because it's moving forward, the planet's continuously doing this, creating a vortex.
Apparently
Yeah.
the guy that said that though was saying like, don't listen to anything I say and
Okay.
somewhere else.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a bit.
Yeah, well, Nassim Haramein went into it, and that actually made a lot of sense when he went into it, because he taught that it's like this, but then you got to think, well, the sun is actually travelling through the galaxy, so as they're spinning, we're moving, and we're just actually rotating around the centre of the galaxy.
See, that's the thing. I've got the idea that we're always on this plane still. Like, say, if this is our galaxy, our solar system rotating around the galaxy, it's still on this plane. Like, there's a centre there.
Yeah.
All the planets are still on this plane, and we're doing that. But he's saying it's more like that.
Yeah.
As the sun goes forward, the planets go around the sun.
Yeah. But I thought,
But
I think
makes
most people
sense,
have thought it was
though.
like
That would
that. It
make
does.
sense,
It still
though.
makes sense. Yeah, definitely.
And I think we do have little cycles like this as we're going around as well, because we're in a binary, right, with Sirius. So we're actually going like this around each other, around the centre of the galaxy,
All right.
creating this kind of.
Yeah, fractals.
Like a
So it's not
spiral
just
like
it's not just a vortex. It's a vortex that's also going this way and also going this
Yeah.
way. So then like the greater, it's like there's the fractals again, you know.
Yeah.
So you come out to that greater thing. It's just another orbit.
Well, then the galaxies are doing it to each other, and perhaps the universes are doing it to each other as
Yeah.
well.
Did you actually see that picture? I think it's something they recently released, and it was basically all the clusters of galaxies and everything, and how they call it the great attractor. They're all sort of, the gravity is stronger in these little streams, and it's all sort of pulling, or some are pulling towards that great attractor and others are going away from it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And
Actually, it's been shown that the universe is expanding really fast. Faster than it can compact on itself. It's actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Life prevails.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, but with that theory though, that it must be contracting.
No, because what they did is they highlighted all the ones that are moving towards this great attractor,
Okay.
and the rest were going out.
Right.
And it sort of showed where we were. I forget the name they gave it, but and it showed, I think we were in a part that was actually moving towards the great attractor or whatever.
So we're contracting.
There's a really good Terence McKenna theory. It's called the attraction theory, where he looks at like our evolution isn't a progression from the Big Bang. Our evolution is attraction back to source, to complex. So our evolution is about complexity. It's continually getting more and more complex, and that complexity is getting things into a vibration that it gets closer towards source. And so his way of looking at it was like really God or source or whatever it might have been through the Big Bang back in time, like in our linear, what we describe as a linear time, threw it back in time to allow it then to come back towards him and pick up all these experiences along the way to become him again.
It's kind of like we were talking about earlier about the densities. So going out down to different densities allows different knowledge, and also kind of links in with that whole thing about consciousness observing itself, to be able to have the experience to understand those aspects of itself. So if it's light, or if it's some higher concept of God, then creates this world, or then gets split into finer densities so that it can experience those different sections of infinity and actually learn from it,
Yeah, well, that's like the idea of just having one finite boundary, simple plain oneness, whatever, and then to divide that the way Nassim especially says it. You get the circle, and then you divide that by putting the equilateral triangle in it, because it's physical. Everything has a polarity, and you put the triangle the other way, and then you get a new set of boundaries, and then you put the circles around those triangles, or those star tetrahedrons, and then you're back to what you had originally with the double triangle, and then so you put a circle around them, and then you put the circles inside them, and then you just keep going in, and like if you put it into a computer system, you program it, you can just keep dividing infinitely. So you add that essence of infinity, to a finite boundary. So they, the finite and the infinity actually are intrinsically connected.
There's no differential between the two. It is one and the same
because
thing.
no matter how much more information you get by going smaller and smaller into smaller layers of fractals, you're getting so much more information to an infinite level. But you still never surpass that finite boundary.
Sure.
And also at every point where you can go into the infinite complexity, you still have one piece that can define the entire system.
That's
So because like every fractal has a shape, it has its own body. It's just that they comes off looking fairly identical. So that one thing defines that.
So it's like the holographic idea. The one tiny little part actually contains information for the whole, and vice versa.
The infinity one is this real motherfucker that I was trying to get my head around. That if the universe is infinite and continually expanding, there's no boundaries. It's just continuously infinite, and the multiverse that goes with that. That means every possible eventuality, anytime any places happen, has occurred.
Is occurring right
Is
now.
occurring. Right at this very moment. Everything is occurring.
I don't see the connection between those two.
Because you believe there's a past.
I just find
wrong.
it in that.
But that's why like goal setting is, and coincidences and synchronicities that come into your life. That's like a little node in another universe that you're achieving or bringing yourself into. So all potentiality is always happening, is always occurring. You can choose, or sometimes you have it chosen for you, which universe you're in at any particular point of view.
I think it also comes down to myth. So the story that you put behind whatever's happening now. So you could have some set of circumstances that are happening right now, and you can apply any story to define them.
Right.
Any story, and that could be the story of past lives, for example. But really, you're creating all of those past lives at that moment when you create that myth.
Sure. So it's a myth that gives a definition rather than what the actual thing is, which is all the same anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different perspective on something that's happening.
I don't see the multi-dimensional model of reality as being something that's so personal and individualized to the extent that we're having multiple experiences at the same time in different dimensions. Where there's different stories playing out, other possibilities are having their course. I don't see it that way. I see the other dimensions as being places that may have different laws of physics that apply to them, and so they're more like spiritual places, I guess, as we would sort of understand them as being other than this physical realm.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. I mean, more based on this dimension that we're possibly in, or other realms, definitely, but other universes is quite different. I think you can have multi-universes within one realm. But I know what you mean. You have like a dream state, spiritual world, and beyond that or whatever, or aliens,
DMT world.
Yeah, exactly. And they're all governed by their own set of physics.
Yeah,
definitely.
I wouldn't know.
Has your dad spoken much about that? Or has he put any thought into that?
Into what?
Other realms and physics behind
Not really.
that? Okay.
You'd have to talk to him about it though, but he's quite. Actually, I do remember having a conversation with him once about multiple dimensions, but he was taking the angle of theoretical physics angle and trying to define that it's possible.
Right.
Not necessarily talking about the possibilities itself.
Sure. Okay.
How you would actually explain it through mathematics.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they say inside every black hole is another alternate.
Another universe. Yeah.
But the information contained on the outside is contained within the inside of the black hole.
Yeah.
It's like the same amount of information.
Because
so
there's a stretching of time and light. So light actually travels faster than the speed of light or something like that at the event horizon of the black hole, because it gets sort of sucked away. So actually information disappears, light stretches.
Light comes out too.
A two-way thing.
From a black hole. Okay.
Yeah.
And when it's opening, does it pulsate? Is it kind of like a universal anus It's like, oh, come out to the other side.
Black holes are just literally that. Just
So
black holes of the universe.
I think the light shines
Brown
on
holes.
the black holes are.
Really interesting if they blink and then it's like,
Yeah.
just like a poo would see, like, oh, there's some light coming out, and then it's in another universe, and it's getting flushed down the toilet, and it goes through another black hole.
So what's the analogy of something going into the anus? Going back, the light going back in. What would be the analogy of that? The rocket, yeah.
I guess that would be like when you wash it with a bidet or something.
No, it's
Right.
not.
Bit of vinegar.
Next chapter.
Is that chapter 2?
Turn the page.
So
Sometimes I look at the universe and Snary type going back into the last chapter, but I'm not talking about feces and like all anuses. But like I look at it as if it's an organism, then all these planets are kind of like living cells, like the whole macrocosm, microcosm thing, and they've got like the nucleuses and these different parts of it and stuff. And I wonder if, you know, what that creature would look like. And if it is expanding, what's it eating to expand? What's it feeding on
Was this?
to grow?
Yeah, this is interesting.
yeah, like as a human body, sorry Kelwyn, like
No,
a
no.
human, that's a perfect description of the human body, all these cells. We're more space than we are actual material,
Well,
our
that's-
human bodies. So but we need something to keep us growing. So what would
What's
the
the universe
universe
feeding
feed
on?
on?
It's
Yeah.
expanding.
Yeah.
Because when you look into, you look into the sky at night and you see, those scattered dots and stars, and when you look down to an atomic level and you realise that everything here is actually 99.999% space, empty space. To us, this looks solid. We're looking from way out here, and the only way we can experience it as that space is to use instruments, microscopes and all that sort of thing. But when we look out to the stars, and then we use instruments to see that, there's a hell of a lot of space out there, and there's these little dots and orbiting and stuff like that. Well, if you could zoom right out from that and actually look at that, would that be a solid?
A solid object.
Yeah.
What
could
would
it be? A bean, or could it be a table?
It's a
or
marble.
Big tiger.
It's a big marble.
Yeah,
or something.
big tiger, a big
Yeah.
lion.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Maybe then the black holes are just the pores of its skin.
Yeah.
The black holes could be the chakras. The chakra system, the energetic vortex.
Nodal points.
Yeah, true.
Well, maybe it's the nucleus as well. Like it's it's a center, has everything.
I don't know, because does it
Yeah.
generate energy? Like a sun, I think, would be more of a nucleus. I'm going back years to when I was studying biology.
Yeah.
Everything transfers energy and transforms energy and shares amongst each other. So it would be getting the energy from other galaxies and sharing with other ones, and then processing it internally and going into finer and finer densities into the solar systems, into like it would just direct it out and then back in again, like all a big flow.
Well, yeah, at the quantum level, they say that electrons can go back in time, or can be in two places at once, and things like that. I mean, where are these electrons going and everything? I mean, are we sharing them between all of us? Is
The more
this what
appropriate
connects
question
us?
would be, what is our perception of time? If these things can be in two different times at this, or two different points in space at the same time, then what is our perception of time and space? Exactly.
Well, yeah, I guess when you're zooming into that level, you really are changing your perception. But it's only when you get to the atomic level that things, start getting really weird and don't quite fit with usual, given instruments, sensors and stuff like that.
So that would make sense. And also, you're talking about a bit earlier about if you pulled right back, we'd see it. Could we see it as a solid object? Maybe if we put right back, we're in some space we just don't understand that either. Just as when we go right in, we can't understand that because we're here.
Well,
If we go right back, would we be able to really understand what's going on down there? I'm not so sure we
If
would.
we try to apply our understanding of now and this level where we are in our human perspective, and we look down at the cells, and then we look at like the particles, and we just go, what the fuck is going on? And we have to come up with all these crazy theories, to try to understand it. But it's just because we're using this mind
we're very
to try
limited
to
by
explain that.
But then you've got Buddhist monks and stuff where they've gone through to the atomic level and down, and then they see their past lives, and actually using this to
Mm.
still see.
Yeah, so it can be done. Like you can broaden your viewpoint to be able to understand a lot more than
Yeah.
what.
But do you think that's
Normally
a
you can.
separation from our senses, because isn't it more like a meditation and that
Yeah.
stillness
Going within.
going
Mm.
inward and actually not using your senses as much, more your
It's
intuition?
Still a
Dissolving
sense.
your ego and just.
It's a bit different.
Yeah,
It's
the
different
going
from the science. You're using tools to be able to translate between our mind and where our mind is,
Mm.
and translate these other levels into our logical understanding. So we're using these instruments to measure and all this sort of stuff. And that's why we're getting so confused. Because the
Mm.
Buddhist monks, they'd be able to just kind of be in
Mm.
that level.
Yeah.
They don't need to put a logical understanding or explanation onto it. They can just put their
It's
own
like a
So
heart-feel
they're-
understanding.
They're still logical. I wouldn't say that they're not logical. And like science then goes to show what they've experienced and what the Buddhist monks have like come back and said, hey,
Yeah.
we've got this. And
Well, they are still
Yeah.
logical, but they're also able to use the illogical as well. The
Yeah.
There's
irrational.
always the logical side, but what I mean is we're using the logic from this realm. You know, we're using classical physics. We're still kind of, the majority of people are still kind of stuck in the mindset of classical physics, which is just objects and things moving, you know.
Reductionism and
Yeah.
Particular size
And that's just one level of reality.
yeah.
And we can't, you know, if you speak to a scientist, they would say you can't apply the laws from this level to this level, and you can't. You can't
Mm.
apply the laws of particle physics to our physical bodies because
Mm.
that just doesn't work like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it really is looking into another realm or another reality
Yeah.
or dimension, because you know things do operate differently.
Yeah.
We're given, you know, we design these tools to be able to look down to that level or look through
Mm.
this supposed barrier
Mm.
that allows us to go into a different dimension.
But we can't. It's interesting because we can look at it, but we can't look through the eyes of those
Yeah.
things in that dimension.
So we can see what's going on, and okay, they're doing this, but how are they doing it? We can't view it from that
Yeah,
viewpoint.
we can't
And then we have to
experience
come up
it
with
first.
Yeah.
theories and ideas
Yeah.
on how it's happening.
And
But
the
we're
other-
pretty lucky that we can get there, though. We're pretty fortunate. Maybe we don't realise how fortunate we are. We're actually looking at another realm.
Could
we
it
are
be
being able to
that-
do that.
Could it be
is
that
a
we're
stepping
actively
stone.
seeking something that we already know? If these Buddhist monks
Mm.
already are able to get their awareness to those levels and understand it from the heart, not the mind,
Mm.
maybe we have kind of, as a whole, as a collective,
Mm.
kind of detached ourselves from already knowing it.
Mm.
So now we're seeking that knowledge again.
Within us already. It's already there. It's just so it's like
but now
remembering.
we're looking
yeah.
outside through microscopes and through
Mm.
different.
But
you know,
yeah, it could be as a
Mm.
stepping stone, because I like that idea of, you know, we'll create or invent something outside of ourselves, but ultimately the goal is to not need that anymore and be able to do what, like, you know, invent a plane so humans can fly, but that's just until we realise, well, hang on, we can fly.
Mm.
I mean, that's a bit far-fetched. Or,
until we remember.
Who knows?
yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that we, you know, we have, our consciousness has this desire to know and to expand, to learn, raising vibration or whatever. And so if we're sort of a little bit lost on our path because of materialism, greed, or whatever it is, just being out of balance, we will find a way to get there. And so at the moment it's through these instruments and
Mm.
science and exploration and all that sort of thing. But ultimately, I mean, the Buddhists can do it, they can do it without instruments and stuff like that.
Mm.
And hopefully one day we all will get there, but this is just a stepping stone before we actually come back into balance and be able to do that naturally.
Mm.
It's almost like we went down into back to being the basics so we could like change something on a
Yeah.
collective scale and then rebuild everything back up again.
Yeah.
So
'Cause it seems like the-
rebuild.
Clean foundation.
Yeah.
sort of thing.
From our ordinary perspective of understanding and gaining enlightenment and gaining that, we think of it as trying to attain this higher thing, but for a long time we went right down. We went right down to the base material as far as we could. We were striving for it, weren't we? Just really striving for it. But at the same time, you know, we still had other humans in different parts of the world going in this direction. It's just like this. It's the binary of this human existence where we will look at both. We'll look at the real dense. We'll have some people do that, and we'll look at some people go through just the real space and light. And understanding both is going to be vitally important.
Yeah.
But enlightenment isn't something that's like up there or something we're trying to attain.
No, that's true.
It's a state of us in our natural state, without, you know, programming, without habits, without reactions, without traumas.
Debatable. I'd say enlightenment could also be a striving towards something higher when we decide that our nature isn't good enough. Say we could actually go there, you could go there. No, nature's inherently flawed, like when we prune roses so we get a more beautiful rose. So maybe we need to work on our nature, and we have a set of ideals and a construction that we create that's almost unattainable, like some sort of idea of what it would be to be perfect. And then as you strive towards that goal, then if you were ever to achieve it, then you could say you're enlightened. So like Gandhi, for instance, had the ideals to which he strived towards, and people were like, you're a Mahatma, and he was like, no, I'm not a Mahatma, even though he finally attained that ideal that he set for himself. But then he said, well, I won't have actually attained that state of perfection until I'm actually dead, which was kind of interesting.
The thing is, as soon as you put like an expectation on something that you want to attain, then you're already kind of setting yourself up to be disappointed. Whereas for me, enlightenment isn't about trying to...
A destination.
Yeah, it's not a destination. It's actually a state that we're already in.
It's like a very like a medicine, if you look at it that way. It's like an opiate. It's like I'm okay. But then, you know, something you said that it's like you set yourself up for disappointment if you strive for an ideal. And you hammered me about this last night. You know, it's like, well, you're trying to avoid suffering. You know, and so I've got to say the same thing. Is your desire not to strive towards an ideal, but to see yourself as perfect as you are, to avoid the disappointment, to avoid that suffering, and
you
also
misunderstood me then, I'd say, because I wasn't talking about ignoring those things or not suffering. It's about shedding light on that suffering and not resisting seeing that suffering. Because if we all have those things inside us, it's about accepting those things and actually looking at those things and going, okay, this is part of me, and this is, you know, enlightenment would be all the things that we might think of as baggage. It's not about throwing them out, it's accepting them, and then so that it's no longer a weight, rather it's a, you know, it's a positive.
And it has light on it. That's the very notion of enlightenment. You're shining light on something, and it's shining light on everything. It's not about, exactly. It's not that freeing yourself of the density. It's putting light onto that density.
I think the two paradigms can actually work in tandem as well. So, like for Gandhi as well, it's like it's an effortless kind of evolution. So he believed that it was just having the ideal is the balance that helps you to strive upwards naturally, though. But you accept your truth where you are at that present moment, and you experience that and you live that. So you're not fighting against your reality as it is at all, but it will naturally go upwards towards a goal. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know. But I think to a certain extent, like they did some tests where I think it was a bunch of students and those that like had failed or had the belief that it was going to be easier, as opposed to those that had the belief that it was going to be harder. They achieved better than ones that believed it would be easier. So our beliefs do actually have some kind of effect on what we experience, to the extent that it will be a better experience, or we'll have a greater ease with it.
Or
So
if we believe, for example, that the past exists or the future exists, then we're going to actually create
that. Just quickly, like thinking of that idea of actually having a map of our place in the known universe. I had a thought that maybe on a fractal level, where the more we understand about our place in the universe and about our actual home, our universe, the more enlightened we become, because we can think further and deeper.
Shining light on the subject.
Yeah, and then I wondered, well, maybe enlightenment is the cells in our bodies figuring out where they are. I'm not thinking they're sitting at a computer and seeing a picture of our body and go, that's where we are in the body. But actually having consciousness on that level, on a cellular level, so your cells actually know where they are in your body and what their role is and what they're there to do.
So us as bodies, as part of a collective, and how we're playing our role within the collective of humanity.
Yeah, so we're
Within
like
collective
the
of-
cells and the universe is the body, and we're just
Yeah.
sort of realising what our body looks like,
Yeah.
and I guess that allows us to think about what are we doing here and how can we benefit the whole, you know?
Humanity's kind of like an organ. Well,
Yeah.
actually, no, the earth would be like an organ.
Yeah, we're like
And
the
then
cells.
We're like a certain, maybe a bunch of chemicals in that particular organ that has a role within that organ.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
if you think of the
And-
Earth as an organ, then we're kind of on the boundary of that. We're like at the cell
The
wall,
membrane.
at the
Yeah.
cell membrane, and that membrane accepts or rejects what comes to it to
Mm.
allows the cell to like feed and get its
I
energy.
think the
into
membrane's
cell.
up there in the atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah, and we're kind of down in the nucleus, kind of interacting within, or
So we're
inside
like
the.
kind of energy generators,
Yeah.
not gatekeepers, because I'm going to like, you know, kind of in a sense, like our consciousness will determine kind of what experiences we allow and disallow in our own lives, and that's going to have an effect on this earth.
Mm.
So we're like, well, I'm going to allow, you know, some kind of destructive kind of activity, and it's going to destroy the earth. Then that's a cell membrane issue here that may have.
It's a cancer.
Yeah.
But also though,
Okay.
there's another flip side to that too. Perhaps like Mother Earth or that cell is allowing us to extract and do these things to help increase our ability to be able to carry Earth's life force further, like us bringing the child of Mother Earth and taking it somewhere else. Because if you look at it from a biological level, from all biology is about propagation of that biology, and it stands to reason the Earth is exactly the same. So the interesting concept I've come across is that she's allowing and facilitating us pulling oil and minerals out of her left, right, and centre and creating pollution, because eventually we'll get to a point where we can then propagate her as a biology, whether it's on another planet or make up another planet altogether. Yeah, so I don't know.
Or you can look at it like kind of taking a step back from that, the way we stand on the earth with our feet and then our heads up like erect as well. We kind of act as antennas, and transmitting those energies that come through our feet and then up. We might be sort of sending some sort of signals or electromagnetic radiation somehow.
Sure.
But then if we get stuck in our minds and the games that we play, our day-to-day lives, our interactions with work and people in the streets and around the city, then we're not really allowing that flow.
That's when we start mining.
Stopping it. Yeah, exactly.
I like Greg Braden's theory of the DNA strand, and you know, he says this is actually a perfect design for a transmitter receiver, and he plots it out. You know, you've got your strand, double helix like this, and there's because love is a very high vibration, high frequency, and hate and fear and everything being more of a low, slow vibration.
Which is interesting because slow vibrations permeate through more
Yeah,
boundaries.
that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you look at a strand of DNA, you've got like a fearful or fear-based emotion or frequency going through the strands here, and you'll get 1 or 2 points perhaps that this vibration is actually touching on the DNA. But if you have a very high, fast frequency like this, it's actually touching many points on the DNA and activates a lot more.
Yeah, right.
And so to live in love, you actually become a better transmitter receiver, maybe on a fractal level.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, just the resonation that it can detect and pick up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And it gets more information.
Yeah.
I was about to pick one out.
Chapter 4.
Should we talk about motorsport? Or let's talk about those Eagles. Would you like to talk about the Dockers?
So, how's that local sports team?
I like sports.
Alright, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about like based on the materialistic point of view and how that resonates with who we are as human beings. And like for me, being in that world is still, I find an important factor. Like I still love watching sport and fighting and I love all that sort of stuff. Just for me personally, it just really helps me remember and stay subconsciously grounded, I believe.
Mm.
But is that necessarily needed?
I think sport's amazing, and I love sport, and I always have, and always will. I think
Music
But-
as well, we should put in with that, and all those.
the thing is though, going along to a sports game now, like, I'm a 10-year Eagles member, but last year I went to a few games and I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And I was looking around and I spent more time watching people than the
Yeah,
actual sport.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and I realised that people, a lot of the times, when they're watching the game, they're more occupied with repeating things that they've heard on like the radio or on TV or on the footy show or something, and just repeating these things like as if it's their thoughts.
Yeah.
And
Because they've built up something around them that doesn't allow their true thoughts and feelings to come through, and this layer that they've created around themselves is what actually is their expression is.
yeah, rather than actually engaging with the game itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
being
something else that's
involved in it.
engaging. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
abusing players and umpires.
Yeah. See, that thing really shits me. Yeah, really, I'm sure it does with all of us. But when there's that abuse and just people taking out aggression on another person
Yeah.
because of their own bullshit,
Really
is
take
really
Yeah.
what it is.
That's
take
it.
personal.
Yeah.
Sports is supposed to be like the cultural, like medicine that sublimates like our aggressive tendencies.
Yeah, it puts it to in something else rather than fighting on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is almost like a war, but without the death in
Yeah.
most cases.
Well, I think that was just came out of necessity, I guess, and part of our human evolution was okay. Let's get these battles. These males need to aggress. Let's do it away from swords and guns, and let's bring it
Safe
into
space.
let's create a safe space.
It's almost a measure of our civilization.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a good measure.
Some cultures have sports where the winners or the losers get killed, like actually killed. Like in the Maya, I think it was the Maya. They had a game where they wouldn't use their hands or feet, they'd use like their body to get this ball around, and
Yeah.
the losing team would end up getting killed.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's what we've heard. But I was going to say I've been Dockers member. I think this is my 9th year now, with reserve seats, and I'm to the point now where I'm like a bit over it, even though we're just getting really good. We ain't
Dockers
good.
Really good.
Should have been killed a long time ago.
Well, it would have saved me a lot of money. But I guess it was like you were saying. It's something that I've kept up in my life because I guess over the last 8 years has been probably the biggest growth period for me in my life, spiritually I guess, and it got to a point where I was like, this is, I was quite skeptical about it, and I wasn't sure I really wanted to stay in that environment. But then it became something that I allowed myself, I kept up with, because then I'm sort of part of society. We've got things to talk about, and we sort of stay connected to the masses, I guess, in a way.
Australian culture.
Yeah, and I mean, I really enjoy footy, but I don't get into it like a lot of other people. I don't
Did
follow.
you watch that TV show last night?
Yeah, like that. I mean, I don't watch TV at all, so I only go to the games. But yeah, people are like, do you watch the footy show? I'm like, no, I didn't. Or did you see this? Or did you hear about them? And what what's happening outside sports and stuff like that, or the gossip.
Going into like actually watching a live sporting event, especially, but even on TV, it really is a practice. It's like it can become like a type of meditative practice. You're losing sense of everything else around you, and you're focused on that one thing.
Yeah.
And so you might do a meditation with a flame or whatever it is, but like a sporting game is exactly the same. It's just
That's
a
why
form of
so much
meditation.
aggression comes up, because they're meditating and they've got aggression in them.
Yeah.
So this aggression comes up, and that's why they're shouting at the umpires. and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, but not really aware of it, so it doesn't.
That's the
It doesn't
thing.
get healed. Yeah.
So, but then you've got guys like Brett Kirk, who's like an amazing footballer for Sydney Swans. He got himself into a point just through his mental incognition and lots of practice that he understood exactly why he was going out on the field and belting people. Like, 'cause he was a pretty hard player. Not an unfair player, but he's physically aggressive.
Did he have toxoplasmosis?
He may have done. Yeah. He had Catwoman's disease. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think is, if you're a elite sportsman, if you could, obviously they get themselves to where they're physically really fucking harmonious and really quite strong. If they've got that mental and spiritual association of why they're doing it and that complete comprehension, it'll make them really amazing. sports person. Really would.
Sports person, yeah. As long as you can take something from that into the rest of your life, and but because he, I think he brought meditation into Sydney Swans.
Yeah.
They started meditating and stuff like that.
And he's brought it into the Dockers now as well.
Okay.
Yeah, as an assistant yoga, and they're doing all that.
Yeah.
Great. It's cool.
Yeah, because I think that's something. Yeah, there's. If you have a peace, you come from a place of peace, you can probably perform a lot better, have a lot more awareness and control over your body and stuff like that.
And mental toughness as well. I saw a good interview with him about that.
A psychological game, and there's so much that goes into it. And if you can be an observer of that and the effects of the mental play and everything that goes on. I mean, Docker's a good example because it was a very psychological problem for them for years.
For a long time.
That they lacked confidence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, luckily they're getting past that. But I think it would bring a lot to a team.
Going back to fractals, this whole thing is like it kind of shows that every aspect of your life and everyone else's life offers opportunity to heal. If you have like a sports game where things are coming up and you take that chance to actually heal those things, you can see that every aspect of your life also has that equal opportunity to heal yourself.
Yeah, true. No, I've got nothing to say about that.
How are we going for time? I think it's about an hour. Do you guys want to wrap up?
Okay.
I think that's alright. I think we've done alright there.
It was a quick hour, actually.
It was a quick hour. It's been good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's great to be back on.
Right, we'll wrap up there. Make it official. Anyone, any last words before we...
Did kind of have something, but it would send us going again, like maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking about the sports thing and the meditating and bringing that consciousness to awareness and how it would make him a formidable player, because then he can kind of activate that part of himself that was aggressive, and you could know when he needs
the lizard brain when he needs to
bring that energy to. But I was bringing it back to Buddhism again, and one of the problems that we have as well with our neural pathways is we're habitual creatures. So if we have a habit, we're more likely to go to that sort of set behaviour. So when you were saying, can he separate it outside as well, like leave that there, that's going to be problematic. So now sports actually becomes problematic because it's reinforcing a behaviour that is aggressive.
Well, that's what spiritual practice is about. I mean, it's about not necessarily leaving those habits behind, but becoming aware of your habits and
so
not
watching them,
allowing them to be attached to. So if there was a spiritual practice, emanating throughout sport, then that aggression would just sort of come up and out and flow.
So then does meditation break down neural pathways that have been created through habit? Is that one of the effects that it does?
Or it could
Possibly.
maybe just make you become aware when it's happening, and your reaction and your ownership of it.
Can set
So
new
creating new pathways that allow you to see it.
Neural pathways might change after that at some point once you start developing different,
behaviours.
behaviours and habits and that. But
Yeah, because then you could probably start associating some of those things with peace, love, kindness, or something like that. But to be able to turn it on when you need it, in its original sense of to get rough and tumble on the field or whatever. But then when you recognise those behaviours in your life, just being able to step back and say, well, that's not me, not having that attachment to it, which would bring a sense of peace, I'd imagine. So I guess that would even affect the way you play and everything, bringing peace into that rough and tumble as well.
Well, I think someone who was like a great precursor and probably did that without even realising he did it on a spiritual level was John Worsfold.
Okay.
Really, like he was just like a monster out in the field, but then he's like the nicest guy. When his whole coaching career, you never saw him get upset. He's always like quite easy. He's quite content. Even when things are going bad, he's always. But on the field, he knew how to take his aggression out. He knew how to really just put the hurt on or whatever. But he had such a great balance. And I think that's what Paul Roos is great at as well. Brett Kirk will become good at. You know, those athletes are ones who've had really, and that's why that's made them great players and great coaches. That they've had both sides. They've had the physical understanding, but also the mental and spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
You know, because Brett Kirk would be an amazing coach as well, just like Paul Roos and John Worsfold are and have been.
Talking about football.
I'm so stoked we are. It's great.
From toes to football.
Yeah. It's sort of related as well, aren't they? Though?
That's the description.
Yeah, we just came back in a circle.
In this podcast.
Toes
to football.
and everything in between.
All right.
Toe jam.
And the nature of existence.
Alright. Thank you, Adrian. It's been nice.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll just keep playing this for a while longer, but I'll probably press stop sometime soon.
Fade it out on this.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks very much, everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.